be part of this virtual meeting and to talk about the impact on the world economy of COVID-19 and what it means for travel and tourism going forward. As I'm sure you're all aware, this has been the most devastating economic crisis in history, much more severe than the Great Depression, and certainly than the economic crisis of 2008-9. Its implication has been very different, and we don't yet know the full extent of it because many governments around the world have gone to the best of their abilities to prevent the full impact. And that's particularly been possible in rich countries, which have given $12 trillion, that's between 10 and 20% of countries' economies, to helping those in need. Bankruptcy has been banned effectively in many countries, and workers have been furloughed or put on other such schemes to enable them to be supported even though their businesses are no longer operable. In addition, interest rates are at record high lows. There's already $17 trillion of bonds outstanding, of debt outstanding, with negative interest rates. And so companies have been able to survive at very, very low cost. What this all means is that this year we are likely to see overall for the advanced economies a decline of around 6%. Some, like the UK, 10%. France be more, maybe 11 or 12%. Similarly with Spain. US most probably around -7% this year. Next year, we will see a rebound. The news on the vaccine is good, but even without a vaccine, we are likely to see a rebound, but at a much lower rate than before the crisis. So it won't be until about 2025 that we get back to the levels of our economies that existed prior to the pandemic in 2019, those levels. The advanced economies are in a very different situation to developing countries, which are suffering to a much greater extent, not from COVID-19, except for Brazil, Mexico, South Africa. Very few countries have been as deeply affected as, for example, France and the US have been, or the UK. But they are suffering more from the economic consequences, with travel and tourism having been destroyed, but so too export receipts on many dimensions, the remittances that migrant workers send back. And unlike the advanced economies, they are not able to issue their own debt in greater amounts. And so they've been unable to support their economies, which means that they've had a much more severe economic impact. Many millions of more people will die of hunger than will die of COVID-19. And this tragedy is being exacerbated by the fact that far from the rich countries coming to the support of developing countries as they have previously, aid will actually go down this year. Aid will go down because it's calculated as a share of the rich countries' economies. For example, the UK is likely to give 10% less aid this year than last year, even though countries need it even more. There's also been very little global solidarity. While the rich countries have found $12 trillion for themselves, they've found less than $100 billion to support developing countries, less than 1%. What's desperately needed in emerging markets and developing countries is fiscal support, is the writing down of debts, is moratoriums on debts, and other activities which will allow these economies to support their workers. And so the economic impact on poor countries is much greater. Next year, we anticipate growth of around 4% in the advanced economies, coming back from a very low base, and maybe 5% in emerging markets. China, of course, big exception, but other countries in the region like Taiwan and South Korea have also been extraordinarily good, as have Vietnam and Mongolia, at managing the pandemic, and of course, along with Australia and New Zealand. But China is going to be the engine, as it was after the 2008-9 crisis, in pulling the world economy along. The election of Joe Biden in the US is also likely to lead to more effective control of the pandemic, but the gridlock in the Senate is likely to mean that there will be no major fiscal stimulus. The world economy will be $11 trillion smaller next year than would have been the case, but a vaccine will make an enormous difference if it's globalized. And the overcoming of vaccine nationalism is absolutely essential for that purpose. This will effectively allow income growth of around $9 trillion. Very small cost of the vaccine compared to the benefits of the economy. And that's why we need to redouble our efforts to make sure that vaccines are available around the world. What does this all mean for travel and tourism? It's very likely that travel and tourism will rebound effectively. Of course, many of the airlines have been devastated, and that's a long-term scarring. And some of the great airlines, like the 747s, have indeed been taken out of business, along with many Dreamliners. This is likely to be a permanent scarring in a number of ways. The first is that it'll take some time, I think, for many countries, unless the vaccine spreads globally, to be able to open up effectively without quarantines. There will be corridors that will be established and places that are safer to go to than others. There also is unlikely to ever be a rebound of business travel to the extent that there was before. This has been an inflection point for business travel, and for three reasons we should expect lower business travel in the future. The first being, of course, the cost savings. The second being the carbon emission savings and a growing awareness of companies of their carbon footprints. And the third, the efficiency savings in terms of time that remote meetings have allowed. There will still be business travel, but most of the people I've interviewed tell me that it's likely to be at 10 or 20% of previous levels. That is vastly reduced, with it used very strategically for initial meetings, for final closure of deals, but not as long trips, and certainly not as many people going on trips. However, there will be a new growth opportunity, and that is because what we're seeing as people move to remote working is the need to come together on occasion, not in the office, but to establish the networks, the creative ability, the water cooler moments, to bring new recruits in, to establish social capital in firms. One needs to come together physically. And I anticipate that rather than people going to the office, they will go to venues, to hospitality venues, to beaches, to ski resorts, and that will create a massive opportunity in off-site meetings, which is greater than existed before the pandemic. And that is where there could be a lot of opportunity for a combination of breakout rooms, conferences, coming together, social networks, and having fun for people that I think will be a great opportunity. There will also be a rebound, as there was after the First World War, as there was after the Second World War, where people's pent-up need to get together, to catch up, to party, to have fun, to dance, to experience the places they've been reading about and dreaming about in lockdown. That is a big pent-up demand. And so I think we will see a very strong revival in travel and tourism, domestic, but also international. And if that can be captured, if people's concerns can be addressed, that would be a very good basis for coming together. In sum, then, this is going to be a grim year. We need to worry more about the hunger impact, but clearly the economic impact around the world, particularly devastating for young people and their future. They've lost a lot of social life, they've lost a lot of schooling, they've lost a lot of higher education, job prospects, and they're inheriting a massive debt. So we owe them a solidarity, and the world after COVID cannot be a bouncing back to the world before, because that business as usual is what got us to where we are today. I think ensuring that the stimulus packages are part of a Green New Deal, as the European Union, as South Korea and other countries are doing, is absolutely vital. If the stimulus is going to be poured into cement and steel, that could indeed lead to a bigger spike in carbon emissions. So how the stimulus is engaged in, and how we guarantee a better life for people in the future, a more prosperous life, a shared life, is a crucial question we should be facing now. And the travel and tourism industry has a massive role to play in this. It's always been the source of the most intense job creation. It gets jobs quickly to the people that need it most. And of course, it in the process gives people what we all need, which is something to look forward to: pleasure, opportunity, and prosperity. Thank you very much.